In the course of the next 30 minutes, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the anatomy of the software industry. Now, why would you be interested in hearing about the software industry? I guess there are three reasons. The first reason is that the software industry is the home of the fastest growing companies in the world. The second reason is that the software industry is the home of the highest gross and net profit margins in the world. And the third reason is that the software industry is achieving these glamorous results by stealing your revenue and your profit. So if you can't beat them, could you join them? And to answer that question, I need to share with you my experience with your industry, with the telecommunications industry. I'm by no means a telecommunication industry expert. But as anybody else in the world, I'm exposed to it and have been for a number of years, and I want to share that with you here. So we need to go back in history. We need to go back to when I was a little boy. And I remember that my grandmother put a coin on the phone when she went out. When she came back in and the coin was on the table, she knew that somebody had called. And she would go and brew herself a cup of coffee, and then she would start calling systematically to family and friends to find out who it was that had called and what it was about. My grandparents had Sundby 267X. So you call the exchange and you ask for Sundby or for 267X. And the X was indicating that my grandparents were sharing the line with somebody else. And that's right, they were sharing the line with the family on the first floor. In the 50s, telecommunication was a serious matter. 10 years forward, I spent my summer holiday camping in Italy with my parents. That was also the year that I turned 16. And as we were listening to, maybe even dancing to A Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum, I was introduced to an Italian girl with brown eyes and jet black hair. You might be able to see who's who on this picture. And that certainly left a big impression on a blonde Scandinavian boy of Viking origin. So I was definitely determined to stay in touch. Upon our return to Denmark, my father made it clear to me that there was no way that I could stay in touch with my new Italian acquaintance through long-distance phone calls. That was prohibitively expensive. Telecommunication was a serious matter. So what did we do? Yeah, for at least for a couple of years, we wrote letters to each other. Now, in the 60s, the Postal Service was still making good money. Fast forward to 1987. That was the year that I got my first cellular phone. It was an Ericsson NMT. It was installed in my car. Well, the radio unit was actually installed in the trunk, and the headset was installed between the seats. Well, that'll be over here, right? But in Europe, it's over here. No, it's over here. So you drive down and you talk while you're on the phone. I was with my first startup in those days. It was a software company, and I was on the road all the time. And I remember that mobile phone was a real productivity booster. I could call my wife and say that I will be home late. But it was also genuinely a productivity booster for business purposes. But this little thing on the roof was definitely not unimportant either. It told a very important message about the owner of the car. So in the 80s, telecommunication was still a very serious business, something that you paid a lot of attention to. I worked for a couple of years in the US, and I had a cellular subscription out of Miami, and the proud owner of one of these clamshell phones. I didn't use it very much because the base call charge, inbound and outbound, plus whatever charges would be added to that for the conversation, was $1. So I actually didn't use it very much. If people called me, I said, I'll call you back as soon as I can. So as soon as I came back to the hotel or from a phone booth, I would use a trunk service, which was provided by, I believe, AT&T, where I would dial an access number. I had a little book with access numbers for each country in the world and for all the states, and I would call that access number and then a hashtag and a star and then the number I needed to access to avoid the long-distance phone charges. Now, that is the first time I remember starting to tweak the telecommunication system with the assistance of AT&T that I never really understood, but to tweak the system to save cost on telecommunication. I moved to Germany in 1998, and I was among the first to switch from ISDN to ADSL. That was a pivotal point for my business, and I believe also for the telecommunication business. Not only was it an amazing improvement in internet connectivity and the experience of browsing the internet, it definitely also accelerated the proliferation of the internet, and it changed my industry. And I believe it also changed your industry, and maybe it actually changed every industry. So when my daughter became a teenager in the beginning of this century and met somebody on a summer holiday, telecommunication was certainly no longer an issue on the family dinner agenda. Telecommunication was important, but it was not something that we paid a lot of attention to. It was like water from the tap or electricity from the block. It was there in abundance at a very low price. So family life certainly became much, much easier, and we didn't get as much noise from the back seats anymore. So when I started my current company, which is TBK Consult, in 2007, I cannot recall that we spent a single minute worrying about or paying attention to telecommunication. I spent some time figuring out which headset I should buy, but apart from that, telecommunication was not something we paid any attention to. So what does a company like mine, which is a small consulting company operating worldwide, what do we worry about? What do we pay attention to? Preparing for this conference, I took an inventory of our suppliers, and here they are. In this block here, we have our professional services providers. Those are the hands and the heads of people who help us run our business. And in this block here, we have our software providers. Actually, not all of them. Some of them we pay for using, and some of them somebody else is sponsoring so that we can use them free of charge. Now, the professional services is consuming 71% of our operational expenses. And the software vendors are consuming 21% of our operational expenses. And over here in the corner, we have two vendors that are telecommunication vendors, and they consume less than 2% of our operational expenses. I could switch full rate for another broadband provider tomorrow like that. I couldn't switch 3 that easily because they provide free roaming in most of the countries where I travel, and that's very valuable to me. But when I looked at this picture, it dawned on me that behind all the services that are really important to us, professional services and also software services, there's a lot of telecommunication going on. Now, among our professional services providers, the Bureau of Small Projects is located in Los Angeles, and they take care of our website. The Compot Design is designing all our publications. We run a publishing company. So they do all the design, they do the illustrations, they take care of that. They are located in Tallinn in Estonia. And Redbox is providing virtual personal assistant services to us, so they do all the administrative work. They're in Portugal. So to coordinate the projects with people in Los Angeles, in Estonia, in Copenhagen, and in Portugal, we use a web-based project collaboration and management platform called Jive. Our files are shared through Dropbox. We do a lot of videos for our animation videos for our clients. And to upload that to YouTube or Vimeo, it goes directly from Dropbox to the service. It doesn't go through our computers. When we need to talk, we use Skype. When I need to talk to my clients, 99% of the cases we use Skype, Google Hangout, WebEx, or GoToMeeting, or some other service. We don't use the telephone. So, would it be possible for the telecommunication industry to take some of that? Well, so far as you can see from the logos here, none of these services are provided by a telco company. It's all what I believe you call OTT, over-the-top services, and they're provided by somebody else. When I look at the telecommunication industry from my perspective, it seems that the only answers you have are two strategic approaches. Either you think we need to keep Hans-Peter Beck and his company as a customer, so we'll do more packaged services that we can offer to him at a lower price with increasing performance and quality. That's sort of the volume approach. You need to package your services so that you can compete on price. I'm absolutely delighted that you do that. But there is another approach. And that is to say, no, we don't want to do business with Hans-Peter Beck because he doesn't have a need for very sophisticated telecommunication services. We'll take a customized approach to people who have massive call centers, who have needs for IT infrastructure, with high bandwidth communication lines. Those are the people that we're going to serve. It just seems to me that both approaches are very exposed to commoditization. They are exposed to hyper competition, and they're facing eroding margins. It's a race to the bottom. So could you possibly grab some of that fast growth in the software industry? Could you grab some of that very attractive margin that they take from you because what they offer me includes the telecommunication services that you used to provide and charge for? Let me give an introduction to the software industry, and you can then judge for yourself. Mark Andreessen was the founder of the first commercial browser company, Netscape, back in the 90s. Today, he's I believe, very successful venture capitalist with a 16C in the US. He wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal in August 2011 with the headline, "Why Software is Eating the World." And what he explains is that software is creeping into everything. If you're a car manufacturer, the major part of your product in the future will be software. If you produce TV sets, the major part will be software. Any industry will be affected by software. If not in the product, then in your internal business processes, either facing your supply chain or your customers. He also claims that it's the fastest growing industry in its own right because there are a lot of new business models based on software. I believe he's right. It is the fastest growing industry, and it's also the most profitable industry in the world. It's definitely a place that you should look to be. And one of the other things that sort of sustain that claim is that if you look through the top 100 most valuable brands in the world, 16 or 17 of those are software. Only 3 are telecommunication. If you look at the top 30 most valuable brands in the world, they're listed here, already 11 of those are software/technology companies. So I would say the software industry is open to everybody. And the good news is that it's probably the industry with the lowest barriers of entry of any industry. It only takes a couple of bright people and a couple of computers, and you have a software product. You may not have a software business, but you have a software product. If you want to build a sustainable software business, there are a few idiosyncrasies that you need to be familiar with, and I'll share those with you just now. And to do that, I need to introduce you to a simple concept. This is called a business model. The business model can be used to describe any business in the world. If you want to start a software business, you obviously need to come up with a value proposition that is more attractive to the customers that you want to serve than the competitive alternatives. Now you'll think, Hans-Peter Beck, that's not rocket science. That goes for any industry, that you need to come up with something better than what is already available. But there are a couple of conditions in the software industry that makes it very difficult to nail this relationship between the value of what you offer and the needs that the customers have. Two conditions that you have to be able to deal with. And the first one is that software is invisible. You can't walk around a piece of software and say, oh, that's what it's like. So that's what it does. Okay. Maybe you can do that with an app that tells you the weather forecast for the next 5 days. But if we're talking about business software, it's actually very difficult to explain and understand what it does. Now, if I say SAP, you immediately say business software. But that's only because you already know the brand. If you go into the website of any software company that you don't know, which may be difficult, but if you go into some lesser known brands, you will see how difficult it is for these companies to explain what they do and for you to understand what they do. So software is invisible, and that makes it very difficult to communicate what it is that it does. The value of software is very situational. Now, this illustration is of a party. And at this party, the disc jockey is the same every night. He plays the same music every night in the same sequence every night. But the party is never the same because it depends on the crowd present. And the same is the case in the software industry. You may have two pieces of software, the same software, installed in two separate companies that are comparable. In the one company, it will produce wonderful value and it will increase the productivity in that company. And in the other company, they'll meet in court to sort out the problems related to the fact that the software didn't work. Why is that so? It is so because to deliver value from business software, the customer needs to adapt his business processes to the software. And he needs to train and motivate his people to use the software as intended. Now, obviously, the software vendors will provide services helping the customer to achieve that value. But it doesn't come automatically from the product. So these two conditions, that software is invisible and the value is very situational, exposes the software industry to a challenge that is called the Law of Diffusion of Innovation. It was coined by a Professor Rogers in the 50s. He was professor in agriculture technology. But what it says is that if you have something which is new, which is invisible, and where the value is situational, only the technology enthusiasts and the visionaries in the market will talk to you. That's what we call the early market. The mainstream market are scared to death by anything that is new. They're scared to death by something that can go wrong, that may damage their company, that may hurt their career. So they're not going to listen to you or talk to you until your technology has been commoditized to a certain degree, and until a market leader emerges that you can pick without too much risk. The challenge is that the early market is only accounting for 16% of the total market, and that the mainstream market is accounting for 84%, and they don't want to talk to you if you have something new. Why is that a challenge? It's a challenge because if you want to make it in software, you need to get past 20% market share. You need to become a recognized brand, because then people will come to you, not based on your product, but based on your reputation. And when they do that, your average customer acquisition cost falls, and every single copy that you sell of your software, the marginal cost of producing that is zero. So the revenue will fall down on your bottom line. You can invest in marketing, in sales, approaches, you can invest in improving the product, and you are engulfed in the tornado and on your way to market leadership. In the software industry, if you have ambitions of becoming a software company, you have to understand that the market leaders take it all. You either go for market leadership or you go away. That's the nature law in the software industry. Now, which market are we talking about? We're in the UK. I believe Scotland is a part of the UK, the British Isles at least, right? You never know these days. And if we go back to look at our vendors, how many of these companies are Danish? Well, you wouldn't know, but actually only two. It's Monero down here, who is our auditor, and it's Full Rate, who is our broadband provider. The rest of the companies are foreign companies. Are there no Danish software companies providing these kind of services? There were, but some of them have actually been acquired by the big global players. Skype has a root in Denmark. It was developed in Estonia, but so the idea was captured in Denmark. Microsoft swallowed up some of our ERP, local ERP providers. The software industry is global. Now, obviously, Denmark is a very small market. It's just about 0.3% of global demand. But the UK only represents about less than 3% of world demand. So it is not enough to sustain a software industry. So are there no local players in the software industry? Because I know that most of you are actually primarily operating in the UK. So is the software industry not for you? Well, to answer that question, we need to take a look at the business model again. And we need to look at these two building blocks, the channels and the customer relationships. The channel is responsible for finding new customers, nurture the relationship, mature the relationship, activate the need for your product, develop the business opportunity, and win the deal. And the customer relationship building block is responsible for making the customer happy, making him stay with you, and expand the customer relationship. How do we do that in the software industry? Well, I have a few examples that I will share with you showing how we do that in the software industry. This is Basecamp. Anybody familiar with Basecamp? Basecamp is providing a web-based project collaboration and communication management platform for small and medium-sized projects. You don't put a man on the moon with Basecamp, and you don't dig a tunnel under the channel with Basecamp, but I'm absolutely sure that both NASA and the organization behind the channel will use Basecamp. They started in 2004, and today they have 2 million customers spread around the globe. Their solution is available in 20 languages, including Russian, French, Chinese, German, all the main languages are covered. How do you become a customer of Basecamp? Well, you hear about them, or you go to their website. They don't do any outbound marketing or sales at all. You either hear about them or you find them, you go to their website, you sign up for a 30-day free trial. If you like it, you convert to a paying customer. If you don't like it, you simply unsubscribe. You download all your data and you unsubscribe. Making a commitment for Basecamp is a very, very small commitment. So there's not a big risk associated with it. What does it take to run a company like Basecamp? It takes 50 people. 5 of them are located in the one office that Basecamp has, and that's in Chicago, downtown Chicago. The rest are spread all over the globe. Not that Basecamp has operations all over the globe. These people are working out of their home, serving customers across the globe. Now, Basecamp could run their business from the moon if only the internet connection was strong enough. Maybe that's something you could solve. This is SimCorp. SimCorp is providing software for the financial management industry. So if you're running a pension fund with a lot of money, you go to people like SimCorp. They started out with this particular business in 1995. And today they have 170 customers around the world. And to manage those 170 customers, they have 1,250 people on their payroll. Now, why do they need all these people? They need all these people because there are not a lot of deals open at any time, but the deals that are open at any time are very, very big. So the customers take an awful long time to make up their mind who they want to do business with. So the sales cycles are very long and the sales process is very expensive, and you need to stay close to those opportunities to win them. Also, if SimCorp wants to move into a new country, they need to invest in localizing the software. So there is a very big need for proximity to the customer. You need to be close to the customer to do business with him. And you need more than just one customer in a geography to justify the investment in localization. So you need to massively invest in building a presence. So that's SimCorp. Salesforce, you all know. Salesforce started out like Basecamp, selling their software directly to customers, but realized that the customers couldn't figure out how to use it. They had a far too big number of non-performing customers that signed up for a trial and never got any further. So they started to recruit consulting and implementation partners. And these consulting and implementation partners started helping the customers making the software work. Today, they have a very big network of partners around the world because their market is smaller and medium-sized companies. They're moving up market now, but that's where they originally started. And these small and mid-sized customers wanted to be served by local partners. Now, to recruit and manage local partners, Basecamp have established subsidiaries around the world, not to serve the customers, but to manage the partners. The software, which it actually is, even though it's provided as a service, is still sold directly from Salesforce to the customers. If a partner takes a customer to Salesforce, they will be paid a referral fee. But the ongoing subscription payment is between Salesforce and the customer, while the partners will bill and invoice the customers for the services that they provide. This is Autodesk. Autodesk is providing software for people who make things. You may know them from their first product that they brought on the market in '82, which is AutoCAD. But they're making software for construction, design, modeling, simulation, and so on. Very, very, very complex products that it takes a long time to learn how to use, and to deliver the full value, these products also need to be integrated in the workflow by their customers. So to do that, they have local partners. But instead of having their own resources, their own subsidiaries, to recruit and manage those partners, they have distributors to do that. It's probably a reminiscence from the early days in the software industry where software was still boxes that you needed to move. But that's the structure that they have today. They just recently started, because they're moving away from the perpetual upfront license model to the subscription model, to sell their software directly to customers. And the last example here, that's the Scales Group. Scales Group is providing solutions based on Microsoft Dynamics 365, which was previously Dynamics NAV and AX, maybe you know it. It's enterprise resource planning and CRM and business intelligence and app development software all in one package provided to the customers through Scale. So Scales Group is helping customers use this product in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And I took this example because it shows where we're moving in the software industry. Scales is exclusively basing their solutions to customers on Microsoft Dynamics. They're not reselling SAP, they're not reselling Infor, they're not reselling Sage or Exact or anybody else, only Microsoft. How much of their revenue is passed on to Microsoft? How much of their revenue comes from software sales? 10%. 90% of their revenue, and obviously a major part of the gross margin, comes from adding services, from doing consulting for the customer so that they know how to adapt their business process to the software, to do customization of the software so it matches the the workflow and the needs of the customer, to do training, to do implementation, to do ongoing support. So what we're seeing in the software industry, as far as distribution models are concerned, is that we have zero-tier business model, that's what we call it, when the vendor deals directly with the customer. And in the case of Basecamp, they can do it without having a presence anywhere. But SimCorp is not that fortunate because of the volume of services required to deliver the value of the software. They need to be close to the customer, so they have offices around the world to do that. Salesforce is running a one-tier distribution model directly directly to the customer, but from the services through the partners. And Autodesk is running a two-tier business model. And so is Microsoft. The development in the software industry, as far as the software is concerned, is towards zero-tier distribution. The software is sold directly from the vendor to the customer. Maybe the partner will get a referral fee. For the services part that is required to make the software work, the solution, doing the solution, all that will be provided by resellers, by partners. And that's why we in the software industry call them value-added resellers. So what I foresee in the near future, that there will no longer be a margin on software. As a business partner, you will have to live from the services that you provide. So, as we can see here, all the software companies are global software companies. Do you need to have a global perspective if you want to be a software company? Absolutely. And why is that? Because of this phenomenon. Any business in the world only have 3 value options for their strategy. And one of these 3 value options must be the dominating. The first one is product leadership. You provide a product that has certain features or functions or convenience that makes it more attractive than competitive alternatives. And for that, you can charge a premium price. That is Basecamp, and some of the well-known brands that has this approach is Tesla and Apple. The other value element that you can have as your leading value element is customer intimacy. Customer intimacy means that you bundle the product and services together to provide a solution for the individual customer. That's the strategy of Scales. That's what they do. And some of the well-known names, system integrators, is CSC and CGI. And the last value element that you can have, and that I believe is the value element that you know in the telecommunication industry, that's operational excellence. That's to get a cost advantage. That's to be able to provide your standard product at a lower price than your competitors. I cannot find a single example of a software company that has operational excellence as their leading value element. It makes absolutely no sense. Why not? Because we have no operations. Bringing a software product to the customer is an electronic process that takes a few minutes. We have no factories. We have no warehouses. We have no copper or anything in the ground. We don't have any distribution center for spare parts. There is nothing between us and our customers that we can optimize. So when I thought hard about it, I came up with Amazon Web Services. Yes, that's based on operational excellence, and Microsoft Asia. The issue is that the only value element that has any advantage of being local is customer intimacy. Customer intimacy definitely has a value. If you are focusing on operational excellence, that's not a software company. That's what product leadership is, what software companies do. You have to go for global market leadership. So what does that mean? It means that if you want to become a software company, you need a global perspective. You need global ambitions. You need to become a global company. Now, what if you don't want to become a global company? What if it's not your ambition to set up a subsidiary in the Netherlands or recruit business partners in Spain? You want to stay in the UK, you have two options. Option number one is to become a Basecamp type company. Come up with a simple product that meets a recognized need better than anyone else in the market, and you can offer that to the entire world from no matter where you are. You need people around the world to help you do that, but you don't necessarily need to open offices. Or the second option is become a scales type of company, become the last mile to the customer, become the people whose systems integrate, who put together the products and solutions to meet the customer needs and provide the value. Because proximity will remain a competitive advantage when it comes to deliver the final solution. Because you cannot send your hair to be cut in India. And you cannot send your house for refurbishment and to be painted in Turkey. Thank you very much.